I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section. Now remember, given the payday, has it been accounted for? Okay. 610B. That was the payday. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story single-family dwelling. Fire showing from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Bring up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows centered below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor, second line being stretched. Primary stretches are underway.
Hey, welcome back to our Fire Engineering Podcast, The Command Post. I'm Rick Lasky, along with my best buddy, Chief John Salka, and we've got another great show for you today. Just want to remind you, we have the Hump Day Hangout, the third Wednesday of the month as well, with Chief Scott Thompson and Chief Curtis Burt. So don't miss that. Third Wednesday, noon Central Time, right here at fireengineering.com. You can catch them later on YouTube when they post them. So check those out. FDIC reminder, we're going to be there. We're going to be there as we always are. We get in there, Sunday, John, and then we're out Saturday. Monday we'll be doing our workshop, 5-alarm leadership, real people. Don't wait. The seats always fill up. There's already classes that are booking out. This one always fills up. So make sure you pre-register for that hot workshop on Monday, 5-alarm leadership, real people. And then Wednesday, after opening ceremonies, we'll be doing our breakout session at 3 Degrees of Mayday. Same one we did last year, packed the room, and people that missed it said we want to go through it or we want to go through it again. So that one you could just walk in, as you walk in, they'll scan your name tag, so you get credit for it. You get a certificate when you're done, you bring it back home. But make sure you check us out there. If we're not there teaching with you and you're not in our classroom, just look for us at the Fire Engineering Book Booth or there. We're there all week, and we'd love to see you. All right, so John. So today, let's talk about. You and I have talked about this. We just talked about this the other day. This particular topic has to do with the rookie, recruit, probationary firefighter. I was just in Clarksville, Tennessee. What a great fire department, buddy. I told you they want us out for the Company Officer Academy. Great chief, great leadership, great firefighters. And I was talking to them about it, and I had a chance to meet with a couple brand new firefighters. And one of them actually posted her picture with me. She's just been on a job for like 2 months, and she showed up on her own without even being asked, just, probably, in uniform, sat up in front, which is what you and I have always talked about. But there's several things you and I always bring up in our classes about the rookie or probationary firefighter and how they can fit in or be the best rookie firefighter possible. Because a lot of times, I just don't think they're prepared. Nobody hits them up ahead of time saying this is what you need to be successful in the firehouse. Unlike what goes on in the FDNY, some other places, which those are few and far between. But you guys use something. The FDNY uses a phrase. We mentioned this before. Help me out. It's now that you what? It's
now that you're on the job, get into the job, and just to I don't want to say correct you, but just to correct the concept of what we're talking about here. This is not an exclusive FDNY phrase. I don't even know if it started here or started somewhere in. Joe DiBernardo, not Chief, but the boy used to say that all the time. Young Joey used to say, now that you're on the job, get into the job. And there's some other slight variations of it. But I don't want our listeners or anybody else down the road who thinks that I or we or the FDNY are taking claim to that phrase, although it's a very popular phrase in the FDNY. And certainly the concept is absolute.
It's like vent, enter, and search. We talk about that, and we're not the ones that created it, that kind of stuff. But I've just always thought, John, it's a great saying, because you and I in our Company Officer Academy, and we can hit on some of these things in a little bit here, we have a section we cover your new firefighter first day, the role of a company officer. It's a laundry list of things, bud, that we should be covering with every brand new firefighter their very first day, the first moment you have, to help them start down that path the correct way. So many times I think we just miss that people just march into the firehouse. They were either just hired and come right in there on their first day, or they got out of the academy. And nobody explains to them what they need to know to fit in, to be the best they can be. I think firefighters, John, I think you agree, are very competitive. You and I don't think we've ever met a firefighter that says, I want to suck at this job. I think they all want to be great at it.
Right.
But I think sometimes as leadership, we fail when we don't provide them with the means, with the tools,
and I agree. And I agree. And I think what has to be said here, up front, while we're talking about this saying and this topic and what it really means, and we'll get into more of the meaning of it as we talk here today. But an important point is that the fire department, or the company, if you're in a smaller rural volunteer company, maybe that maybe the company is really the unit that everybody's working for. But my point is the department or the company. Those are the folks that have to make the commitment, whether it's the chief, whether it's the commissioners, whether it's the line officers that happen to be in office or, in those seats at that time. It's the department and the leadership that have to make the commitment to stress this concept and establish it and let it be, I don't know how many things we talked about where, if it's real important, like who, what, where, rather than, Luna for May Day, they put it on the inside of the bathroom door and inside the stall and on the garage door before the door goes up when you're sitting in the front seat, you're looking at it. There's so many important things that we talk about and many, many, many other people talk about in podcasts and seminars and all sorts of other things. There's so many things that we talk about that are either so important or the most important. And this is certainly one of them. This concept of now that you're on the job, get into the job. It's really all about, generating, interest and enthusiasm for what that we do. And I'm not saying that instructors around the country and community colleges and small county fire academies or even big city academies, I'm not saying those folks aren't doing their job, but I know that's where it starts in the FDNY. Now, the FDNY is a sole proprietor. You know what I'm saying? We're unto ourselves. Right. There's a big wall around us. Nobody gets in. Nobody gets out. If you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. You know what I'm saying? But and our academy, we make sure it happens. It's built into the academy. It's built into the DIs. There's drill instructors there. There's all sorts of people that have special jobs and special tasks to perform with our probies. We have generally, and I lose track of time and lose track of numbers, but it's been at least a decade or maybe more of 300-person classes. 300 people is a lot of people. PD used to have really, really, really big classes, and they still do, but they always have. They always have. My class was 60 people. Some classes are 100 people, but they've been pretty steady with 300 people at a time, especially, post 9/11 for a while, and then it slacked off where we were built back up in strength, and then, eras go by and people start retiring. But my point is, and I want to restate it, that the fire department, the organization that the firefighters work for, they have a gigantic responsibility. So if you are listening, if you are a commissioner, if you are about to become chief, or maybe you're a first assistant chief, you can be chief 2 years from now, you're the folks that can make everything that we're about to talk about. You're the folks that can make that happen. And you're the folks that can research it and look it up and use the right phrases and, talk to your people and run the right activities. And there's a lot of stuff that we're going to mention here that go into making people feel that. And I want to mention one more point before I omit it, and I will omit it if I don't mention it now because we're going to talk about so many different things. Rick already specified, probies and recruits and brand new people and stuff like that. And of course, I don't want to say that's the most important for them than for anybody else because it's really important for everybody, but it is really important for new people because it gets them off on the right track. But it's important for everybody. And everywhere I have worked, I worked in Squad 1 and Rescue 3 and 11 truck and I was in 18 truck for a short amount of time and a couple of other companies. And everywhere I worked, there were guys that were really into the job. Senior men, middle guys, and bops and junior men, And that is as important. You can't produce probies out of probie school that are spitting fire and ready to take on the world and drop them in a company where everybody's reading the Rand McNally Atlas and looking at travel brochures all day long. You know what I'm saying? The rest of the fire department's got to be in shape too.
Hang on a second. So for those younger firefighters that are watching, what John said, Rand McNally Atlas, before there were Google Maps, we had a book that you had to open up in a map.
Yeah. But I think those are two important points about this very important topic.
Well, no, and I agree with you. And we've said it before. If you're not setting them up from day one to for what you're expecting, if you expect something magical to happen, we've said this before. It's not voodoo. It doesn't happen through osmosis. Well, let's just hope they turn out right. I told you I had a very short, angry captain once that worked for me, and he's like, I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for these rookies come out of the academy. They don't know jack shit. I'm like, well, of course they don't, Cap. I guess when you started here 29 years ago, you knew everything. You walked in the door and you knew exactly how to fit in and where to be. And you and I talk about that, welcome to the company and stuff. Everybody wants to fit into where they're at. Everybody wants to, fit into the organization, into the company. They're wearing the uniform. They want to do that. But let's back up for a second, John. So in the academy, all right, we know what places like the FDNY does when it comes to preparing people to the new firefighter probie. What are some of your thoughts for those who are considering being a firefighter? They're a high school or a junior, an explorer, or someone who's out of school that's considering this. If they came up and said, "I'm thinking about doing this," what advice do you give me to prepare? Whether it's attitude or education wise or whatever. What do you tell them? Someone in your, somebody walks in your firehouse, South Blooming Grove, or, some kid in the neighborhood or someone in Scouts or something says, "Hey, Mr. Salka, I would think about doing this firefighter thing. What should I do to prepare, to be that new firefighter?"
Right. And it's not like it used to be. And I personally, I wish everything in my life was like it used to be. I wish everything in the world was like it used to be. I'm 67 years old. A couple of years, I'll be 70 years old. First of all, I can't even believe that. But second of all, I love the world that has passed us by. Having said that, one of the things that would have happened 20 or 30 years ago, if a guy came up and said, "Gee, I'm thinking about, looking at this fire department, career," I'd be like, well, when you're really into it, come back and talk to me about it. And I would dismiss the guy. Nowadays, not so much. Nowadays, it's a different story. Nowadays, and I hate to say it, nowadays it is just another choice on the career path to a lot of people. A lot of kids graduate high school. A lot of kids graduate college, still don't know where they're going. A lot of kids are 37, 38 years old. They have a wife and a child and a home. They still haven't selected a career yet, some people. And, so it's just a little bit of a different world now. And you can be happy about it or not happy about it. And it doesn't really matter. That's the way it is. So my answer to you is I would give that kid, that guy or that gal, the same advice that I would have given a kid 20 or 30 years ago who said, "Oh, I've been riding since I was 9 years old. My dad was a volunteer and I've been riding. And then I met a guy in Rescue 1 and FDNY and I've been riding there. And now I'm an auxiliary fire guy." And I would give the same advice to a guy now who's casually interested in joining the fire service as I would have 20 years ago to some kid that was dying to be there and would do nothing else and would give up a $100,000 a year job to be a $30,000 a year fireman. So, and the advice is, you got to really get into it. You got to really want it because number one, it's not easy. I must say it's easier now than it was years ago. Years ago, 40,000 people would take the FDNY test. I forget what the list was. I forget the list number, how high it went, 7,000, 8,000, something like that. I could be wrong by 1,000 or two. Does it matter, 6,000 or 8,000? No. And now many less people take the test now. Many less. Another example, FDNY. Let's say 10 years ago or 20 years ago, they wanted to hire a class at 300. If it was near the top of the list, they would have to call 301 or 302 guys to get 300 to say yes and start the class. And 299 or 300 would graduate. And now, and this may not be exactly specifically correct right now, exact numbers, but now sometimes I have to call 400 names to get 300 people to say yes at the top of the list. This is people that just took the list, just took the test a year or a year and a half or 2 years. Sometimes it takes a long time to promulgate. But my point is, there's a different level of desire to be firefighters now too. So, but it's still tough. But instead of 40,000, there's still 20,000 people looking for maybe 2,000 jobs in the FDNY. Or I just spoke to my son, Brian, down in Goose Creek, South Carolina, 2 hours ago. He called me about some stuff that's going on there. And he said, yeah, they got a couple of openings. They're trying to hire a couple of guys, and we got a new station. they're planning on opening a new company, so they have to hire like almost a whole new company, 3 shifts of 3 or 4 guys. And I said, how often do they do it? He said, well, like when they need it, if some event is coming up where they might have to hire. He said occasionally people retire, occasionally people move, and go somewhere else or whatever. So the point is, it depends on where you are. FDNY just has a gigantic force of, 11,000, officers and firefighters. There's always a mill, a retirement mill going on. There's always people retiring. We get that WMYF magazine quarterly, every 3 months, the whole back page. Sometimes, the back page is usually in memoriam, but just inside the back page is another gigantic page full of retired guys all retiring, lieutenants and captains and firemen from all these different places. So there's a constant training academy going on. So it works out well. Places that are smaller, or if you go into a county training academy, a lot of guys have to go on their own. A lot of guys have to go and get Firefighter 1 or come up to New York State every 5 years. They change the names. It's a great, OFPC is a great organization in New York State, Office of Fire Prevention and Control. They run the training statewide through the counties, through county instructors and state instructors, and a gigantic curriculum. And I was a state instructor for a while. They have a state instructor. Every year as a state instructor, you've got to go to the academy for a week for an instructor's academy to bring you up to date on, sometimes classes you had to get retrained on a class, the updated class. So, you got to pump people up. You got to tell people, listen, if you want to be a firefighter, you're going to have to work real hard. If you're going to a small department that's hiring 5 guys, expect 20, 30 guys to show up there. That's what I would expect. If only 10 guys show up for 5 jobs, well, your numerical odds just increased. But what if 55 guys show up for 5 spots? Now you better shine, and we're not even on a job yet. My conversation hasn't even gotten into now that you're on a job, get into the job. And that's even more important than getting on the job is being on the job and doing a great job while you're there.
Well, and I've listened to you. I remember listening to you. And what was nice was you were not overbearing. You've got 5 kids, but one of them that decided to be a firefighter, Brian. I remember when he said, I want to do it, and you were not like some parents, like you see in sports. They're playing baseball or football through their kids. Like they're still playing, and there's dads and moms that are trying to be firefighters through their kids. You weren't overbearing with your advice to him. You were giving him good advice on how to fit in, what to do. But, you and I've told people before, if you've got a juniors program, if you've got in your local fire department, if you've got an Explorer program, if there's a way to get into that, do that. Whether there is or not, if you're not even old enough yet and you're in school still, high school, whatever, start taking the classes that are going to help you. Be good. You're going to have to do reports eventually. Be good with your grammar, with English and things like that. Understand what you've got to do with numbers and hydraulics and, the chemistry, things like those along those lines. But the attitude and work ethic of the new firefighter, and John, you and I have talked about this. I think we're both kind of fed up with the excuses we hear from people when they say, oh, it's a different fire service. And it's just, it's a different Marine Corps too. It's a different United States Army. But when they hit boot camp, it all starts over. Life starts over for you. And you don't harass, you don't bully, you don't demean, you don't,
right. And I just said that. I just explained that. It's not the same as it was 20 or 30 years ago. But get over it. This is the world we live in now. If you're at the end of your career, a 30 or 40 year career, and which is where I am right now, obviously, right? I mean, I got on a 79 in the end of the 70s, right? It is different now than it was back then, but it's not better or worse. It's just different, and you got to get used to it. And it's the most senior people sometimes that are the least comfortable with the newest era of people coming into the job, because they're the most different from them, and they're probably like their kids or maybe even their grandkids.
Well, and it's I've talked again. I keep saying this a lot about those that like to blame generations, and I'm like, stop it. There's always been different generations. Since the history of the world, there's always been different generations. Like you said, get over it, train them. All right, you don't violate someone's rights. You don't do the stupid stuff we did like 40 years ago that we've changed. But and I'll say it, there was stuff we did 35, 40 years ago that was just stupid. But you have an obligation to mentor. You have an obligation to train. You have an obligation to set the tempo for the new firefighter coming in there. And you can't do that if you're not explaining to him or her what's expected. So let's break this down a little bit, John, as we're going through this. Okay, let's talk about the attitude that you're looking. Let's go back to Battalion Commander, Salka in the Bronx, or Chief Salka with South Blooming Grove. So let's talk volunteer and career. I know there's some differences there, but still, a firefighter is a firefighter. What's the attitude you're looking for in that brand new firefighter? What do you want to see from that person walking in the door?
I think I briefly mentioned it in my little intro about, the guy should be spitting fire. They should be, and I hate to do this reciting of things, like in a list, because it sort of sounds like, a list of work requirements, but, they should be the first one in. If this is a career job, they should be the first one in. If it's a volunteer outfit. I remember when I joined Mineola, it was a volunteer fire department out in Long Island, still a volunteer fire department. I think they may be doing 400 runs now or something. I think I'm pretty correct on that. I think they were doing about 300 when I was there, a long, long time ago, 76, 77, right before I got on the FDNY. And even in a volunteer fire department, there's usually a Monday night or a Wednesday night, whatever night of the week is drill night, training night. And I always tried to be there early. Obviously, people have jobs and lives, and some more mature people. We just had a couple of 40-year-old guys join South Blooming Grove. 40-year-old men that own their own businesses, own their own homes, have 2 children, 9 years old and 11 years old, and a wife at home.
Contribute.
Right. But a lot of guys do join. A lot of men and women do join as teenagers, or even preteens, but they still show up. And you remember, and I remember, and I'm sure if you're listening today, I'm sure you remember, if you join the volunteers, it applies to the career as well. But you got to remember your first couple of times in the firehouse. Like, I remember being in the firehouse in Mineola a few times. I wasn't even a member yet. I was there doing what? I was there investigating. I was there researching. Gee, is this something I want to do? Hi, how you doing? Hi, what's up? And the folks there were very receptive and very friendly, and they would bring you in and say, "Oh, you thinking about joining or whatever?" And same thing with a career job. After you go through that whole decision to take a test and get on a list and you pass everything and you get hired, even after the academy, all of a sudden there's your first day at the firehouse. Engine 1, how you doing? I'm Captain Sloan. What gonna, I'm the new guy. Oh, all right. You're probably very nervous because it's a whole different group of people doing something, unless you come from a family, which many of us come from a family, but not me. I didn't come from a firefighting family. I was the first guy in my family to join the fire service. And that's a difficult time. It's a difficult time to come in spitting fire when you don't even know anybody there yet. Most of the time you come in, exactly. And that's an important point, and not the old days, sit down and shut up, we'll tell you when to talk. Not that, but it's a version of that. And the version is, listen a lot more than you talk. You'll do a lot better for the first year or two. Just listen and watch what's going around here. You're going to be much, much better off. You're going to learn a lot more. Guys are going to be more receptive, like that or not like that. This goes both ways. Some stuff that you don't like, you just got to deal with. Well, some of the old-time stuff still applies. So there's a lot of guys in a firehouse that don't want to hear the probie yapping or talking or bragging about his last volunteer department that he was in before he got on the paid firehouse. A lot of guys don't want to hear that. So, you tell these kids up front, just keep everything to yourself. Show us. Don't tell us. Show us what you know, And
well, it's funny. Real quick, John, every time you mention Mineola, which is where you got your start, the first thing I think of is they have the best overhead fire siren in the world. I think they're the only fire department in the country that has a YouTube channel.
A Thunderbolt.
They're the only ones that have a YouTube channel that they play the siren. Like there's like 20 posts on there. But here's the thing.
And it was there when I was there in 1976, and it's sitting on top of that firehouse right now, spinning around. It's the same siren still there.
It's like anytime you go, so when Billy Goldfeder brings up, yeah, John, when John was on Mineola, and then he just reaches over and clicks, and all of a sudden that siren starts going on his computer. But the work ethic you're talking about, though, too, John, is, and we have an obligation, like you said, to mold and help that young firefighter, that guy or gal, fit into our process. But the work ethic isn't going to begin with them if you're one of those asleep in a recliner. And I'll tell you this story. You heard me say in this class before. Remember, John, I had a probie who was written up for not wearing his uniform. He wasn't in the uniform of the day, like at 7:30 in the morning. Started at 7 o'clock. And the captain and the driver engineer both wrote him up. And so he was appealing it. He was appealing the write-up. So I'm in there with Tim Tittle. Guy, I love Tim. You love Tim too. And we're in there, and I said, so I asked him, I'll just make up a name, Anthony. I said, Anthony, okay, were you wearing uniform or not wearing uniform? He goes, no, I wasn't in at 7:30. And I'm like, I looked at Tim, I go, so you admit you weren't in the uniform of the day at 7:30. You start your shift at 0700. You're supposed to be in the uniform of the day. I mean, I'm not the uniform police, but you need to be in uniform at 7 o'clock. Why are you appealing this? And you remember the story, John. He goes, well, I go, you weren't in uniform. He goes, no, I wasn't in my uniform. I go, why are you appealing this? And he points to both of them. He goes, well, they weren't. And I looked over. I said, so, Captain, were you in the uniform of the day? He goes, well, wait a minute. He's the rookie. I'm the captain. I go, time out. I looked at this guy, I said, Anthony, I said, look, you need to be in the uniform of the day 0700, regardless of what they're doing. All right? We have an agreement. You'll be in the uniform. Yes, sir. Okay, out you go. You're done. Really? You wrote this guy up? Both of you wrote this guy up for not being in the uniform, and both of you are wearing gym shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts. Lead by example. You and I talk about this all the time, about leading by the proper and right example. If you're asleep in the recliner, folks, if you're one of these people that, we've talked before, be part of the shift, not the crew, not part of the furniture. If you're this lazy ass that doesn't train, doesn't do so, has a crappy attitude, don't blame the young firefighter for not having the work ethic and the moxie and the attitude and the stamina and the piss and fire. If you know what I'm saying. What's it? People seldom.
I don't want to forget. Tell a very quick story about Brunacini when he was a captain, about training. Those of you that want to train, meet me at the back of the engine. Tell that quick story.
You said it. Those. Yeah, when he was a captain, he goes, all right, those of you that want to train, meet me at the back of engine 1. Those that don't want to train, meet me at the back of engine 1. And it was kind of this.
The point is, you got to make it happen. If you're the officer, which is, again, sort of what I said in my introduction, it's the department, and it's the officer through the department that has to make sure that gets done.
Well, seriously, very few kids, and I've seen it happen, that have crappy parents. Very few of them don't struggle to be good people. When we use Mark Twain, there's people seldom improve when they have no one else to model after but themselves. Right. To copy after themselves. So if you're a boss, if you're a senior firefighter, we're going to get that in a little bit here. Be the example. Be the one. Be the example in the room for that young firefighter. Lead with passion. Work with passion. Be into the job. I think I told you, so you and I, Jimmy Spears, right, from Wichita West.
Great
Jimmy,
guy.
50 years old, into the job. Oh, my God. We both love, I admire him.
Another guy that joined late. Another guy joined late in life, right?
Joined late. He's got the mustache like you used to have with the wax. He goes to every class. He goes to every training. He makes calls. He and his wife are some of the best veterinarians in the state of Texas and the whole Southwest.
Veterinarians, they got a family business. He's as busy as anybody could be, and he's got time to be down there all the time and be involved.
Well, and John, I remember, I think I told you this. We're outside, and we just had a good wildland job, and we're washing hose and we're doing stuff, and we have the brush truck out there, and we're finishing up, and he's still sweeping the apron, doing stuff, and I have 2 young kids. Good. Now, don't get me wrong. They're good young firefighters. You know what I'm saying? These are not some mutts and some lazy, but they're standing there the whole time with their hands in their pockets, kind of watching them. And I kept saying, look at that guy. Look at that guy. That guy is like he never stops working. He never, and they're both, yeah. And you know what I'm going with this. I'm trying to drop hints to him. Like, here's a guy that could be your dad. Even though he's young, the guy's fit as a fiddle. He runs all the time. He runs around the world. I think he could have been the one that could have given Bobby Halton a run for his money when it comes to exercise and running. But I'm like, the guy is nonstop, John. He's like you. You're like I tell people all the time. You're always working like 1,000 miles a minute. Whether it's working on a house, going to calls, fighting fires with South Blooming Grove, and all this stuff. Busier than most young guys, but you can't blame the young guys for not being into the job unless you're into the job. Right. So I just thought that was a great example.
Most young guys come to the fire service from their other life, from their civilian life. So, whatever their own personal or family or whatever habits are, values and priorities, that's what they're carrying into the job. So somewhere along the line, somebody has to say, okay, fellas, listen, if this is what you're doing the wrong thing. Here's what we want you doing. Here's how we want you acting. And I remember talking to my son. My son Brian tells me this all the time. He's been in 3 different fire departments, actually 4, but 3 different fire departments, career departments, over the course of a couple of years, traveling around with his wife, right? And all 3 places that he's been in, he's gone through the academy, he's gotten to know some people, become friendly with people, and he would, call me up, for a casual family call, father-son call, but he would mention, oh yeah, I got this guy, Billy, that I work with. What a great guy. He's the guy. He's the guy every shift. The lieutenant's good, but Billy's a great guy. He's into the job, and he actually used to work in Washington, D.C., and then he left, and he came back down here to South Carolina, and he's always got stories about the men, about the firefighters around him who are just into the job, and it fuels him. And it fuels him.
Billy
He's
Pappas.
like, oh, I'm so glad I'm working with that guy today.
Billy Pappas.
Billy Pappas. 72 years old.
And the guy is, I mean, anyway, we could go on and on about how great he is, and he's another role model for you. So if you're not going to show, people what you expect, that's like you and I, we fight fire still, we do stuff, we're out there, we're doing things, we're teaching, we're into the job, all that stuff, because we love it. That's what we do. And we've talked before about, okay, so here's the things we need to explain to you. You need to be get to the firehouse early. You need to be like the first one here if you can, for drill night or for your ship. Be the first one up in the morning, last one to bed. You and I've talked about this when it comes to daily duties. There's always something to be cleaned in the firehouse.
Right.
There is always something to be cleaned in the firehouse. You shouldn't be asleep in a recliner and on your phone. I know some of my favorite probationary firefighters are the ones, John, that I used to go, where the hell is Chris at? Chris, all right, put the tools down, put the paint can down, put the stuff. Come here, I'll be in there 10 minutes, Chief. And then 15 minutes later, they're still out there cleaning something. And so we talked about this.
Here's the point about that: coming in early, staying late, cleaning the tools, checking the rig. Wanting to drill and train. Guy doesn't come in early and full of piss and vinegar and jump on the rig and start checking a tool an hour before a shift. He doesn't do that because it's on a list of stuff that they gave to him when he joined the company. He's doing that because he loves being there. And that's what we're talking about. Not be the guy that follows the rules the best, come in early, don't go home early, clean the tools, every single tool, start every single motor, every shift, wear the right uniform, make sure your shirt is tucked in, check your bunker gear, your gloves, every single thing, every shift. Those are all good things to do. But the guy that's into the job can't wait to do them. A guy that's not into the job, that's still doing his job. And there are guys on the job, on our job, meaning the fire service. There's guys on the fire service across America everywhere that do everything they're supposed to do, and they're not into the job. And they're not into the job. They're just fulfilling what they're supposed to do.
Through the motion.
They can work for the electric company. They can work for a bus company. They can work for any place, and they would probably be good A employees, but they're not into the job. The guy that's into the job is the guy when the captain is talking about something at the kitchen table or on the apparatus floor during drill. When the probie says, Cap, I mean to interrupt, but they told us at the academy that was 1/2 inch into 2.5. You're right, Billy. Very good. He's the kid that remembered stuff like that and isn't afraid to be active in a drill or whatever. Not that he was correcting the captain or anything like that. So that's the whole point. It's the motivator. It's the motivation behind how they perform. A lot of guys perform well. A lot of guys perform really well, and they're still not into the job.
And exactly, we talk about those people. You're exactly right. That meet expectations. They're good employees. They do what you ask them to do. They do everything.
Right.
You and I've talked about it with officers. There's officers out there that do a hell of a job as a captain on the attack line or a search team or even running a fire, but they suck back in the firehouse where we spend most of our time. You've got to be the whole thing. So what we need to be instilling in our young firefighters is we need the whole package. I need the whole thing here. It's like Chief Bob Rubel, one of the reason I'm still in the fire service, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be today. You know what I'm saying? You've heard me tell that story before. Chief Bob Rubel from Bedford Park stood me on my head when I needed most. Wasn't afraid to have that hard conversation with me. Wasn't afraid to hurt my feelings. I don't mean boo-boo, na-na-na-na. I'm talking Rick. I remember him telling me, John, when I was screwing up, I need my Rick back. This is not the Rick I hired. I want the one that shows up early, because I had become a slug for about 6 months. I had a bad time going on in my life, and I'm not making excuses, but that's what was going on. And he straightened me out. He said, I need the Rick I hired. This is not the Rick I hired. like I said, I want the one that's here early, the one that leaves late, the one that's always working, the one I'm like, what the hell's he doing now? Get him on.
Like walking around a firehouse whistling, walking around a firehouse whistling. They're so happy to be there.
With a towel in your back pocket and a bottle of window. And, instead of, hey, we're not doing windows today because we do windows on Tuesday. What are you doing them on Wednesday for? Because they were freaking dirty. You said it before. Some of the fire departments we love to visit, have coffee at afterwards, and the guys are into the job. They're cleaning. And not to go down that rabbit hole, but I always tell that. I just told it in Clarksville, Tennessee, about you being in Wichita, Kansas, and you walked up to the guys in a tower that across from the hotel, and you called me. You go, oh my God! It was like I was talking to guys from the Bronx. They looked like Bronx firefighters. They smelled like them. They sounded like them. And I'm like, and he goes, I hear I'm in Kansas. And I'm like, because they're into the job. And
talk about into the job. Wichita Fire Department, Wichita, Kansas. I love giving them a boost anytime I can. What a great fire department. And Brian's tenure there was very short because of his family situation. I ended up moving and going back down where his wife came from.
Great fire department.
What a great. And of course, I know a couple of people that do work there, and I still follow them on Facebook. And every single thing they do is like, wow, look at that. What a great idea. That's great for the department. That's great for the guy that they're talking about. And it's great for the community.
Well, exactly. So let's touch on one more thing. And we've been hitting on this all along. The whole training part of it. As a new firefighter, we've said this before, you never stop. And if you get into the momentum now that you learn something about this job every day, it'll be easier later on in your career. And I tell people, John, that story about Wichita, that's the story I'm talking about, is like, here's my buddy. He's got 50 years in the fire service. He's still crawling hallways. He's still on the nozzle. He's still running calls at all times of the day with his fire department at South Blooming Grove. We're teaching all the time. We're doing stuff. And he's calling me like he's a probie again, going, you're not going to believe what I just saw. These tools, this ladder and all this stuff. And I said, he's so into the job that, it's like you and I say, the guys we run with, our friends, our circle of friends, they're so into the job, you can't help but admire them. They're training. They learn stuff every single day.
Cobb, 75, 76 years old. He's still teaching at conferences and writing stuff into the magazines and stuff like that. It's amazing. I got a good training story. Somebody just gave me a great training story. Andy, and you know who gave me the story? Jay Jonas. Jay Jonas shipped up and went down to the 28 engine, 11 truck reunion, which I have not been to yet. I get the invitation every year. It's a one-day event. It happens down in Florida. Not that it's a big deal to get a flight and go down there and get a hotel for a couple of nights to go to a reunion with a bunch of guys you probably haven't seen in 30 or 40 years. But I haven't made it yet. But he's made it the last couple of years. Andy Trebenko was a lieutenant in 28 engine when I was a young firefighter in 11 truck. Andy's a great guy. Andy was into the job way back then. Now, that was a great place. 2811 was a great place. All good to great firefighters. Just about everybody. Some of them drank too much. Some of them weren't really into the job, but until the bells rang. And then they were the best guy you could ever be with. But just a great place full of great guys. And Andy Trebenko, I don't want to call him a stick in the mud, but he was a pretty straight shooter. Jay, you could almost say Jay Jonas sort of modeled himself after Andy Trebenko a little bit. He was a rule follower. He was the obvious officer. I don't think I ever saw Andy Trebenko with any shirt on, but the officer shirt buttoned up with the right collar pins on and everything else. Always trained. And there's some guys that didn't particularly like that. It was a busy firehouse. I don't mean you didn't have to train, and don't quote me, any of you people that are listening, or I will track you down. But there are places that do so much work that training just improves them a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And you could have got away with it in 2811 at the time, and earlier before I got there, even more obviously. But Andy still trained his guys all the time, and Jay was talking to him about that, about this and that. And he said, yeah, you know what? There were a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, but there were plenty of guys that really didn't care for me back then, really didn't like working for me back then. He said, but I'll tell you why I was like that. He said, I was in Vietnam, and Andy was in Vietnam, like Butch Cobb was, right? He said, I was in Vietnam, and we had a company officer. I forget what rank he was. I don't even know what branch he was at. I'm sure it was the Army. He said, I was in Vietnam, and our officer used to stay on top of us all the time. Hey, Lasky, what's this? How many rounds you got in that clip? And which way are we going? And then just constantly asking questions and training and keeping his guys sharp. And some guys were like, does this guy ever stop? Are we ever going to get him? And one of the other bosses that in one of the other units that they used to, march with and fight with was just sort of a hands-off guy. He would do his job. He would get it done. He would lead them into battle and follow them out and do what he's supposed to. But he was never really a big trainer or nothing. He said, and one night they got, either overrun or had a gigantic battle with the Viet Cong. And when it was over, Andy Trebanko, he wasn't an officer. He was just a soldier. Andy Trebanko, his officer, and all his soldiers were alive. And a lot of the other guys in the other unit were dead. And he said, I never forgot it. He said, I actually looked around and I counted faces and I counted bodies. And I said, you know what? Every one of those guys that are dead are in that company with that boss. And all the guys that are alive are with this boss that they've been complaining about for however many months or years they were all working together. And I just thought that was a great lesson. And it doesn't always work out that way. I'm not saying everybody who dies in either in the military or in the fire service is ill-equipped or ill-trained or their officers are no good. I'm not saying that. But usually well-trained firefighters with good officers who pay attention to training, my personal opinion is they have a much better chance of surviving not only the fires and the tours, but their career.
Well, and you'll remember this one. You remember this one person. She's passed now. We miss her. But Alice Hughes, Vice President Morgan Stanley, that brought us out several times to teach for them, John. Remember her? One of her biggest people she idolized was Rick Riscola, the book that's written, The Man Who Predicted 9/11. And after the first bombing, February 26, 1993, he was the safety guy for Morgan Stanley at the World Trade Center. If you remember the story, he was ritualistic. He was on them. Bullhorns, evacuations. People were like, he had them like robots. It was again, they read the book. You want a book, folks, to read that's good. The Man Who Predicted 9/11. He drilled the employees from Morgan Stanley, several thousand in the World Trade Center. Oh my God, evacuate down the stairs, out into the street, and this and that. He'd be on his bullhorn. He'd be doing this. And some people thought he was over the top, but they went along with it because he was empowered by the bosses. And what happened on 9/11? He saved thousands of lives, and he ended up perishing, ended up dying in the process of saving people's lives on 9/11. Great book to read about a guy that, since the first World Trade Center bombing, February 20, in 1990, that whole time, in 1993, he said, "No, this is not going to happen on my watch again." And same thing when here, this guy gave his life, but Alice gets, remember, she would get all tearful. She said, all of our people are here. Every one of them, to a man or woman would say, I'm here today because of Rick Riscola. And I got to be honest with you, there was times I'm like, really, I'm right in the middle of this project and now I got to evacuate the buildings for this fire drill. But you're right. And this is where we talked about true leaders.
A lot of people don't know, everybody knows 343, FDNY laws 343, and I'm not minimizing it or mocking it. It's tragic. But there were financial institutions in the World Trade Center that lost twice that amount of people, 700 and something people, So there were other big organizations there. Obviously, those people were victims. They were innocent victims. They were work and were murdered, and our people, were heroes. Our people that ran in there to do their job and knowingly risked their lives. So it's a different situation that led up to it, but the numbers are staggering.
Oh, so, all right. So folks, if you've been listening to the show, we're going to call this one, we're going to steal this saying that a lot of the FDNY guys use, like John said, and a lot of other people too, but especially for me, that's where I've heard it. Now that you're on the job, get into the job. And we talked with you folks about how to prepare for the job before you even walk into the firehouse, before you even start testing, what classes should be taken, how you should be involved. You know what? Get to a firehouse and ask somebody some questions, all right? Have the attitude and the work ethic that will allow you to be successful. Pick the good mentors. Pick the people in the firehouse. Don't pick the buffoon or the clown. Pick the all-stars to model yourself after. Every young kid right now wants to be Aaron Judge with the Yankees. You know what I'm saying? Pick that kind of person, has the professional attitude, that dresses the part, works their ass off, trains, has the right attitude.
Right. You're going to go up and hang out with a guy. Hang out with the guy that's on the apparatus floor with a compartment open, looking at a tool, not the guy that's out in the parking lot waxing his truck. Go
yeah,
exactly. The guy that's into the job. Yeah.
Exactly. Don't hang with the mutts, okay? Hang with the all-stars, okay? Be the first one up, we said, last one to bed. Daily duties, there's always something to be clean. Be cleaning all the time. Be fixing. Be, the learning, the training. Training never stops. It didn't stop when you got academy. It's going to be for the rest of your career. I'm just going to say it. You and I are living proof that we learn something about the job every single day. Listen. You said it before. Listen. Do more listening. Do talking. Show them that you already have the skills. Have the guys going, hey, look, she knows how to run that saw. She must have been, show them. Don't tell them, like you said. Listen and pay attention to the senior man. That guy or gal, that senior firefighter, oh my holy God, they have a lot to learn for you, okay? Be the kind of rookie the other shifts are jealous of, all right? Be the kind of the other ones who go, how do come they always get the good ones? Why can't we get one of those good ones? And
I've heard that. How do we get this numbskull and 28 engine got this great guy,
Oh, have to be ordered to take a break. And when you do, you'll take a break, but you won't sit down. I'm going to steal some of your thunder here. Respect the job and never trash your own fire department. Be professional, and that's in your appearance, your actions, what comes out of your mouth, how you do things. Take care of your firehouse, your tools, your rig. Again, pick a good mentor to follow. These are just some of the things we've been hammering on in a kind of sneaky way like we do. But John, close things out here for you. Advice, we're talking about now that you're on a job, get into the job, closing thoughts.
You know what? Just pour yourself into the job. That's what I say. And Rick and I talked about this class before we turned the microphone on today. And I remember many years ago, or at least several years ago at FDIC, we had the big room session with Bobby Halton, rest his soul. And a young gal came up during a portion of the class. People came up to the microphone and asked questions. And she said, Chief Salka, I have a question for you. She said, you and Rick and even Bobby Halton, you guys are sort of at the ends of your careers. You're very senior people. You're chiefs. You got 30 plus years on a job. But a lot of us, she said, we're at the beginning of our careers. We have most of our career ahead of us. Do you have any advice now that you've traveled the road for so long and so hard? Any advice? And you know what I said? I said, yeah, spend more time at home. Now that comment to that question in that venue sort of conflicts with everything we've talked about so far during this session, but it doesn't. There's a time and a place for everything, and particularly when you're new on the job, and particularly when you're into the job. I want you to be more like Danny Reagan on Blue Bloods. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's the guy. I just watched an episode where he was out with his wife, on an anniversary dinner, and he said, listen, I can't stay tonight. Something just broke in the case I'm working on, and I got to go. And she was like, I know. I knew it when I married you. This would happen. But the point is, and it happens in our job too. It happens in the fire service too. I don't want you to miss every family event, but I want you to know that sometimes you may have to leave in the middle of something. You may have to actually miss something. You may have to miss Aunt Gladys's birthday one night. You know what I'm saying? Because you got a commitment at the firehouse if you're an officer or the chief or maybe even the senior man. So listen, you got to measure that yourself. That's very hard to do. There's no rule book on that one. But don't be afraid to pour yourself into the job. That's my last comment.
I like that. And we talk about courage and all pride and honor, all that different stuff. But duty and commitment are what make for a good person. When you understand what those words are, to be committed to a greater cause, like you just said, and the duty to act and do what you're supposed to be doing is huge. Hey, John, if they want to get a hold of you, best email.
Chief John Salka @gmail.com.
All right, I'm Chief Lasky @gmail.com, or you can run over to chieflasky.com, the website. John, I post all our classes we're doing together on my website. Check us out again. Make sure if you're going to FDIC, get signed up early for our workshop. In closing, we'll close things out here. We're pretty much on all the social media sites, so look us up there as well. But we always ask that please keep the men and women in our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means just that, never forgetting. Be careful, be safe. We love you. God bless you.
I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the 5 million in the entire rear section. Now remember, given the payday, has been accounted for. Okay. 610B. That was the day date. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Bring up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows centered below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor. Second line being stretched. Primary switches are under